However, you have a seat at a very important table, the European table, and thus you're part of the decision-making, and you also have protective guarantees for security. That in itself is a strong motivator to integrate into Euro-Atlantic structures. As a result, the prospect of integration into EU and NATO can become a powerful driver in implementing reforms, reaching economic prosperity and growth, and instituting the rule of law. So how does Ukraine fare with respect to Euro-Atlantic future? Let's just quickly assess its potential NATO membership. And here I must disclose, I don't have a military background, but as we know, where it's been printed in various different sources, NATO membership is potentially open to all of Europe's emerging democracies that share the alliance's values and are ready to meet the obligations of membership. What are these obligations? Although not definitive, at a minimum, candidates for membership must meet the following 5 requirements. And I'd like to lump together the first 2 requirements because I feel in Ukraine's case, they're interrelated. And that's upholding democracy, including tolerating diversity, and making progress towards a market economy. Though the process of democratic transition began following Ukraine's renewed independence, it started in earnest following the 2014 Revolution of Dignity. However, since that time, Ukraine has been faced with ongoing aggression waged by its northern neighbor, compounded with the human and material losses, as well as a variety of social and economic problems due to the war. Understandably, the pace of reforms has been aggravated and complex. This double transition from socialism to democracy and market economy, and from peace to war, further burdens the pace of political, economic, and social reform. But fortunately, a lot of tough reforms have been implemented, and one also cannot overlook that this year alone, Ukraine held 2 national elections that were regarded by the international community free and fair. So yes, Ukraine is making progress on this front. Point 3, the military forces must be under civilian control. That's checked with the new election. The new president of Ukraine has appointed the Minister of Defense, Andriy Zahorodnyuk, who is a civilian. Point 4, there must be good neighbors and respect sovereignty outside of the borders. Well, this goes without saying. Ukraine has never invaded a sovereign country. Rather, it is Ukraine not only defending its own territorial integrity, but it's standing on the front lines defending it for all of Europe. The last point, they must be working towards compatibility with NATO forces. As most would agree, reforming Ukraine's armed forces continues to be a key priority for the government in Kyiv. In the immediate aftermath of Russia's 2014 military aggression in Ukraine, there were barely 5,000 Ukrainian troops that could be mobilized to defend their country. Today, while still facing heavily militarized units supported by Russia in Donbass and Russia's continued illegal occupation of Crimea, Ukraine has allocated 5% of its budget towards defense and is attempting to implement structural changes to reinforce key capabilities of its armed forces. Now, with regard to NATO specifically, Ukraine has been a member of NATO's Partnership for Peace since 1994, and it grew in 1997 to a distinctive partnership. Likewise, it's also important to mention that Ukraine has taken part in UN peacekeeping missions for nearly as long as it's been independent. Over 34,000 Ukrainian soldiers have put on the blue helmets. While these 5 criteria are essential to implement, they do not guarantee automatic membership to NATO. So where does Ukraine stand now? What are Ukraine's next steps to secure Euro-Atlantic integration? Will Ukraine strive to be a candidate for the next round of NATO enlargement? I suspect that these questions and others will be addressed by our focus session's final speaker, who has been intimately involved in these topics and whom we are delighted and lucky to have with us this evening. I'd like to introduce Colonel Hennadiy Kovalenko, who is currently serving as a staff officer at the Strategic Allied Command Transformation Headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. I know that we are very short on time, so I will not read his whole bio, but you can read it in the booklet. So please join me in welcoming Colonel Kovalenko.
Thank you for this introduction. Being informed that my time was shrinking from 20 minutes basically to the 2 minutes, 12 seconds, I will be back to the point, straight back to the point. First of all, why you should listen to me. I was involved in the coordination and harmonization of the international support for Ukraine since 2014. Secondly, I was deployed to the front line a couple of times in different capacities. And the third one, I was awarded by the American side this medal. So I probably must see myself. Thank you. Speaking about the, being with this signed. I would like to speak on behalf of the Allied Command Transformation. What we are doing right now, what NATO is doing right now. I was a little bit disappointed by General Zabrodsky when he said that NATO can be explained not in action talks only. No, this is wrong. It probably used to be a couple of, 10 years ago. Right now it's different. So right now, NATO concentrating in three main directions. Under the umbrella of moving from soft hard power to the smart power. And when we are speaking about moving from hard and soft power to the smart power, there are three main directions. First, this is institutional development. This is strategies, doctrines, concepts, and this kind of documents. The second line of effort is leadership development, how we develop our leadership for the future. And the third line is making sufficient, coherent, and reliable alliances. And I will speak a little bit about all these directions. So first direction is developing the strategies, robust strategies, comprehensive strategies, doctrines, and concepts. Right now, back in Ukraine, we have defense review. But the idea, and idea suggested by NATO, is move from the defense review to strategic defense and security review. Like in some countries, like the United Kingdom, for example, they are conducting strategic defense and security review. And based on that kind of activities, we are developing our national security strategy, military doctrine, now it's military strategy, and the defense planning documents. The second line of effort is making alliances. And my experience being in the general staff responsible for the bilateral cooperation tells me that it's much easier to agree with the countries from the bilateral basis, like the United States, United Kingdom, for example, the Baltic states. It's much easier to make the agreement and to consolidate the effort than we are speaking about cooperation with NATO. So in this direction, situation leaves much to be desired, and the Allied Command Transformation, we are working on that. And the third line of effort that I would like to explain is the leadership development. When we are speaking about the leaders, the youngsters, which are sitting on this table, the basic thing for the Ukrainian people is to change the mindset, to change their approaches, and to change the old school of thoughts. And I would like to mention here and quote here the commandant of the Baltic Defense College, where I was lucky to study there back in 2003, 2004, when I was dark, handsome, and tall. So he told me, the students, that the hardest distance to cross is 16 centimeters from ear to ear, the mindset. If we change that, Ukraine will survive. If not, forget about that country. And I'm concluding my briefing with one small example about difference of thinking from the Western side and the former Soviet countries. So let's think about how you're counting, the Western, how you're counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the solution. Back in the Soviet time, how we are counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Kovalenko. We apologize that I'm sure everybody had to cut their remarks a little short because we need to be out of here by 6 o'clock. But on behalf of the organizers, the American Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, and the Center for U.S.-Ukraine Relations, we want to thank our patrons for their generous support so we were able to have our conference. We'd like to thank Self-Reliance New York Federal Credit Union, Buduchny's Credit Union, the Jurkiw Family Fund, the Heritage Foundation for Security Federal Savings Bank, Cleveland Self-Reliance Federal Credit Union, Novaya Ukrainian Federal Credit Union, and Ukrainian Defense Consulting. At conclusion, we'd like to invite everybody here for our little reception that will be held at the American Foreign Policy Council, which is located at 509 C Street Northeast. And Walter, as always, you organized a wonderful conference. Always a little short on time because there's too many speakers, but they were all very interesting, and I hope everybody enjoyed the conference as much as I did. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for coming.